Mack Rides is a company that has some pretty cool coasters. This company has done pretty well for itself and is making a name for themselves in the coaster community. They've done everything from Time Traveler to Copperhead Strike, and they don't show any signs of stopping anytime soon. This company continually seems to innovate, creating new types of coasters and flat rides ever so often. Now that Mack has started to work with companies like Cedar, the future of this company is looking brighter than ever. It's only a matter of time before they start becoming more prominent in the US and throughout the world. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing the future of this amazing company as well as what possible innovation they could come out with next. I'm going to be answering questions like what new type of coaster will they come out with next? Will they work more with Six Flags? And ultimately, will Mack build a Giga coaster? So join me as I answer the question of what is the future of Mack Rides. But before we start, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I post new videos every week and I truly appreciate all of the wonderful support this channel has been getting. But now let's get to the video. Mack Rides. This company was on the scene for quite a long time, with them creating rides all over the world, but their presence in the United States hasn't really been noticed up until recently. Until the addition of Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City in the US, Mack was only known for smaller coasters such as Wild Mice, family spinning coasters, a few water coasters, and family rides in general. It wasn't until Time Traveler that parks in the United States started trusting Mack for bigger, faster, and more thrilling rides. Before Time Traveler, we saw the addition of smaller coasters like Cobra's Curse, but only a year after Time Traveler, we had Copperhead Strike, and a year after that, Aquaman Powerwave. So what does this show us? Not only does it show that parks are starting to see the value of adding a Mack thrill coaster, but it looks like more are possibly going to come in the future. My evidence for that theory is simple. If you look carefully, you'll notice that Mack has built relations with all of the major amusement park companies in the United States. They've worked with Cedar for Copperhead Strike, Six Flags for Aquaman, and Hershan for Time Traveler. They've managed to put a thrill coaster at 3 of the 4 major amusement park companies in the US. The only company that does not have a large-scale thrill coaster is SeaWorld, but they've worked with Mack before, so it's definitely possible. However, the thing that not many people take into consideration is the fact that Mack's coasters are kind of pricey. So unfortunately, I couldn't see a company like Six Flags getting anything except for Power Splashes and one other ride that I'll talk about later. But with that being said, if the Power Splash is cloned, I would expect to at least see one power loop come to a Six Flags park. Not only would the ride be easy to market, but it would be very different from anything the US has seen. So that brings us to the question of what new rides will Mack come out with next. Mack's innovation is clearly something to take note of. Usually this company flies under the radar when it comes to companies that innovate a lot. When you think of innovation, you usually only think of S&S, Vekoma, and Intamin, but I believe Mack innovates just as much as those other companies. But the thing is, they do it in a little bit of a different way. Let me explain. Companies like Intamin, S&S, and Vekoma seem to innovate by coming out with new coaster types every so often. Each one of their new coasters is completely different from the rest. Mack, on the other hand, doesn't necessarily make new coaster types, but instead makes huge variations on their old ones. For example, something as simple as the water coaster was taken even farther with the Power Splash, and the Power Splash was taken to the next level with the Power Loop. They're still innovating, but instead of adding new major rides, they upgrade their old ones. The same can be said about the spinning coaster. What started as a spinning coaster was transformed into something completely different, the extreme spinning coaster. This trend truly follows Mack, and you can find countless examples of variations within their rides. Even the Big Dipper was kinda loosely based off the Wild Mouse. So what am I getting to? Well, I'm trying to tell you why I think Mack will create a Giga coaster. And I do think it will come sooner than you think. Here's why I think that. So far, the Giga coaster market is mainly monopolized by 2 companies, B&M and Intamin. And with that being said, the last 3 Giga coasters were B&Ms. So when a park wants to get a Giga coaster, there's a huge chance that it will be a B&M. That's because B&M is the king of the traditional Giga coaster. But what if I told you that a Mack Giga coaster wouldn't be a traditional Giga coaster at all? Well, let me explain. The reason is because they won't be affected that much by competition. I mean, in theory, technically a park could have both a B&M and a Mack Hyper. They're just that different from each other. So if Mack indeed decided to make a Giga, I'm pretty convinced that it would be very different from the ones we see today, and it would almost definitely include an inversion. Other than that, I think it would be extremely similar to their hypercoaster model, just larger. Having a ride like this at a park would be a game changer for the industry. Not only does it give parks more of an option when it comes to choosing a coaster, but it gives parks that are close to other Giga coasters a different option. For example, a park like Busch Gardens Williamsburg could in theory get a Mack Giga coaster. BGW is only 1 hour away from Intimidator 305 and is about 4.5 hours away from Fury 325. So if BGW wanted to add a Giga, I'm assuming that they would consider all options including Mack. Personally, if I was BGW, I would add a B&M, but adding Mack to the picture kind of changes things. Another question that isn't being talked about a lot is the question of, does Mack actually have the technology available for them to build a Giga coaster? This one was kind of tricky to figure out. To my knowledge, the tallest coaster that they've built was about 202 feet tall. Getting to that 300 foot mark would be very tricky, but I do think that it's possible for them. In most cases, coaster enthusiasts say that certain track types can only be built at certain heights, but you have to remember that that isn't always the case. The majority of the time, the supports of the ride play the biggest role, and I do think that if they use a slightly different style of support, that the track itself could certainly handle heights of 300 feet or more. So I definitely think that Mack can 100% build a Giga coaster. The only problem I see is the fact that their coasters are kind of pricey. To my knowledge, an average size coaster like Copperhead Strike costs $26 million. So I would only assume that a Mack Giga would at least be $30 million or more to ship to the United States. So it's pretty much around the same price as a B&M or Intamin. So now I'm finally going to be answering my original question of what is the future of Mack going to be. First off, I do think that they will build a Giga coaster. However, I don't think it will be as great of a seller as they hope. I predict we will maybe see 1 or 2 at most. The reason is because I think if prices are similar to a B&M, parks will simply opt for a B&M. However, that's only the case for the Giga. I definitely think that the Mack Hypercoaster is going to play a huge role in their future. I think in the US we will get one eventually. I think parks like Busch Gardens Tampa, Dollywood, California's Great America, and Silver Dollar City are all decent contenders for one. However, as of now it looks unlikely, but it could easily change. As for their other models, here's what I think of them. The Big Dipper may or may not be a success in the United States, and as of now I don't see chains like Cedar Fair or SeaWorld getting one anytime soon. It's just honestly way too similar to a Gerstlauer. But with that being said, I could see Six Flags cloning a few of these. They could easily market it as the first in North America, and considering the fact that they don't work with Gerstlauer, this might be a good substitution. As for their launch coaster, I have a few thoughts. Copperhead Strike wasn't necessarily the greatest investment, but nevertheless it did please the general public, so I could see a few of these being built in the US eventually. I don't have any parks in mind, but I do think that it will take a little bit of time before we get one. This is simply because there is just so much competition for launch coasters. The Extreme Spinning Coaster, on the other hand, is a completely different story. This ride is an absolute crowd pleaser, and not only does it fill the gap of a spinning coaster, but it also fills the gap for a launch coaster. This is a huge selling point when it comes for parks buying a coaster. On top of this, there is no other coaster on the market like it. The only con is that this coaster isn't the cheapest. The parks I could see getting one of these would be Cedar Point, Kings Island, Dollywood, Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and Kings Dominion. The reason I say BGW and Kings Dominion is because neither of these parks have a spinning coaster at all. In fact, the only spinning coaster in Virginia to my knowledge is a little SBF figure 8 spinning coaster. So I think a spinning coaster at either one of these parks would be a perfect fit. So I believe that the future of Mack is going to look a lot like it does today. They're going to keep innovating and perfecting the rides that they have, and just as the water coaster led to the Power Splash and the Power Splash to the Power Loop, I do believe that their hypercoaster will eventually turn into the Giga Coaster. But before we end the video, there's one more thing that I want to mention. If you've been watching my channel recently, you'll know that at the end of the video, I usually give you my thoughts on a random concept that I think a company could make. And I'm about to make a bold prediction. I think that Mack Rides could take their Big Dipper concept and turn it upside down. Literally. Just as the Wild Mouse somewhat led to the Big Dipper, I think that the Big Dipper will lead to the inverted Big Dipper. Now, this is strictly my theory, but I think that Mack could take the 4-cross 2-row Big Dipper train and make it into an inverted coaster. So it would basically be an inverted Wild Mouse with inversions. Now, they may or may not be doing this, but I believe that they have the technology to make it a reality. They've already made a 4-cross inverted coaster with their powered coaster model. So it may take some time, but I think that this concept I'm describing could possibly be real. But that's just my theory. So to conclude, Mack is a company that flies under the radar when it comes to innovation. Along with this, they continually work on perfecting their pre-existing rides while creating a ride experience signature to only them. So the next time you're on one of Mack's signature rides like their launch coaster or Wild Mouse, just think to yourself, this is only the beginning and who knows what iteration of the ride they will come out with next. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see content just like this every week, and comment below your thoughts on the future of Mack. Do you think that they will build a Giga coaster? This is the Coaster Josh signing out.